I did come across a number of letters directed at the British Empire, that is, I think, to the King and Queen, and also to the Tsar of Russia, explaining that he was the inventor of a secret weapon which had rather remarkable properties.
Did you know that President Trump's uncle, John G. Trump, was involved in trying to understand if Tesla's inventions had any applications for the military or for weapons research? It's said that after Nikola Tesla died, John G. Trump was given access to his files and journals that were said to be some of his most secret and powerful inventions. Tesla died alone in a New York hotel room, and almost immediately, as if they were waiting for him to die, the FBI swooped into his room and took every single note, notebook, and project he had within his hotel room. They took everything. However, his papers, his inventions, and his research are possibly the key to our fractal future, or the future itself. For 2 years, they sat on this research, trying to figure out if it had any military application whatsoever, until eventually they gave it to John G. Trump, Donald Trump's uncle, who was a professor at MIT, and was an advanced nuclear physicist as well as being a polymath type of scientist.
You know, my uncle, I had a great uncle who was a great genius, just like other members of my family. But he was a professor at MIT for, I think, 41 years. He was the longest. So when I was in the White House, the head of MIT, Princeton, and Harvard came down to meet me. And the MIT person said, I have a book on your uncle, Dr. John Trump. He was our longest-serving professor. He was a great genius, sir. Do you know how? And he had, he knew everything about nuclear, from math to chemistry to nuclear. He knew it.
After John Trump had analyzed all the documents given to him by the FBI, he began to downplay the discoveries and suggest that while there were some aspects of Tesla's research that could lead to some interesting applications down the line, there was nothing that would immediately lead to a brand new weapon or death beam or whatever the rumor was at the time.
In the spring of 1943, Dr. Carl T. Compton, who was then president of MIT, asked me to go to New York and examine the effects of Nikola Tesla. And I spent a good deal of time examining one by one the papers, the books, and various other memorials that he had accumulated. But I was particularly looking for something which would be evidence of a secret weapon, which I was reminded by the agents, the two agents who were present during the entire time, was a matter of concern to the United States. In the course of this, I did come across a number of letters directed at the upper echelon of the British Empire, that is, I think, to the King and Queen, or perhaps just to the King of England, and also to the Tsar of Russia, explaining that he was the inventor of a secret weapon which had rather remarkable properties, and that he would be interested in entering into a negotiation which would lead to a disclosure of what they were. Of course, I spent a good deal of time looking through these papers, trying to find out what the nature of this secret weapon was.
A lot of the research that was contained in there was swooped up by the government and put into more modern black budget programs that we're seeing hints of today. So what exactly did Nikola Tesla have in his hotel room when he died? What inventions was he working on that were considered to be so dangerous to the establishment and the military-industrial complex at that time? Well, a lot of people suggest that his work on frequency manipulation was one of the key aspects to beginning to create what are commonly called direct energy weapons, or DEWs.
I think I had, although I don't remember it so very accurately, an idea of what its properties were. It had the capability of acting at a great distance, of being destructive to flying objects and things of that kind at a place which was remote from the source. But nowhere in his technical papers did I find anything which revealed an explanation of just how such a device could operate.
These weapons work on the fundamental concept of figuring out the base frequency of an object, like a wall or a place or even a color, and you figure out the frequency that it resonates at naturally. Then you find a frequency that is in harmonic with that frequency, and you begin to agitate it. It's said that Nikola Tesla had loudspeakers pushed up against his brick wall in his laboratory and was running frequencies through cycles until he was able to get the walls to wobble like jello. One can see that this was the early stages of what eventually would become these direct energy weapons, as by understanding that you can agitate certain frequencies, you're able to selectively ignite or cause agitation in a specific material. You can even do this through walls if you were able to figure out the right cascade of frequencies to reach your target. There's evidence to suggest that you could even key these weapons to only burn specific colors or even possibly just specific DNAs. Building on that, it's said that Nikola Tesla was working on a way to transmit electricity wirelessly across vast distances. He did this experimentally with a project that he called the Wardenclyffe towers. These towers would pull energy from the planet and then create a electrical field that would travel vast distances. These waves, he dubbed Tesla waves, were thought to be non-Hertzian waves, as in they don't do the traditional up and down motion that normal waves do, but instead travel in discrete packets. These non-Hertzian waves that Tesla described appeared to carry electricity within them, even though they weren't exactly detectable by our modern electronics. Because what these non-Hertzian waves are also called scalar waves or longitudinal waves. And these waves are believed to be able to both propagate through walls and almost create an instant transfer of information across vast distances from one end to the other. Because the way these waves work is that they add to a stack that shoves one over, which instantly causes the stack to increase by whatever has been added to the stack. This process also creates a friction that can be harvested as electrical energy. Building on that, this electrical pressure can also be used to provide lift to some sort of craft or a propulsion mechanism to provide acceleration. This is how a jet engine already works, because a jet engine compresses all the air coming in through the front of the turbine and then compresses it into little tiny currents that shove out the back, providing propulsion for the craft. But what if you were to do this just with electricity and electromagnetic waves? This is one idea Tesla had, and he believed that you could very easily provide lift for a vehicle just by oscillating frequencies at high voltages and at high frequencies. But that's not the only thing that Tesla was involved in his lifetime. He was also involved with the Philadelphia experiment, helping the Navy figure out how to create a stealth camouflage field around a Navy destroyer by wrapping it in high voltage electromagnetic cables. But that's not all Tesla learned in his lifetime. He also began to probe consciousness itself. You see, Tesla began to understand that electromagnetic fields are in some way tied to the way the brain interacts with consciousness. These waves are talked about in Johann Maxwell's equations, where he talks about how two energy waves that collide and overlap can create what looks like a collapse or energy embedded within the transverse waves. Because you see, Tesla was a man who saw connections everywhere. And while Tesla was very interested in lightning, electricity, static electricity, and how all of these moved, when Tesla was a child, it's said that he was very ill and he suddenly got a flash or a vision, and two light-like beings appeared in front of him and gave him the idea for the Niagara Falls electric generator. He said it was like a lightning bolt had hit him with the idea. And I think it's no coincidence that Tesla, later in his life, played with lightning bolts. Because I believe that Tesla understood that in between those two streams of electrical lightning is an axis where information is exchanged. And where the lightning meets in the center, there's a sort of twisting motion in which information becomes compressed and then inverted and travels to the other end of the lightning bolt. He saw this as how information is exchanged across the vast distances of the universe. And what's really cool is that all of this is starting to be backed up with modern discoveries like that of the Birkeland currents, which interact between the Earth and the Sun and are the cause of the aurora borealis that we see every year. Another fascinating thing that Tesla believed about electricity was that you could use it to reduce the effects of gravity on different materials, such as vehicles, by creating a very strong electromagnetic field that would encapsulate a vehicle or a craft or a person allowing them to feel reduced effects of the gravitational pull of the Earth. Tesla believed that a large majority of what we call gravity is actually due to the electromagnetic force, and that really all of this was just an exchange of electric charge between an individual on the Earth and the Earth itself. And the Earth itself was doing the exact same thing with the sun, and the sun doing the exact same thing with the galaxy. And in this perspective, Tesla was way ahead of his time as both being super spiritual and a genius well beyond his time. There are things Tesla was into that we're just now starting to rationalize and build on today. And we haven't even begun to tap into what these Tesla waves are, longitudinal waves or scalar waves. And evidence suggests that they're all part of the same thing and may actually be related to, or might actually just be, the quantum field itself. Because if these waves exist in what we already call transverse waves or the electromagnetic field, how is that any different than a quantum field? I don't think it is. In a later video, we'll explore this and try to really dig into what these scalar waves are and how they embed within reality. As I think that what consciousness really is a meeting of the information coming from the lowest, smallest parts of the universe, meeting information coming from the higher. And that region in the center is consciousness. And depending how much you're aware of that intersection, the more conscious you are. So you could be a god, a human, or a rock, depending on your level of awareness of yourself in the field. Which ultimately brings us to how when President Trump talks about the coming golden age, he's really talking about a return to something we once had, something that existed around Nikola Tesla's time. He's talking about bringing back the world fairs, where humanity once showcased its greatest technological marvels and doing it again in the 21st century. He's talking about moving beyond total reliance on fossil fuels, not just for energy, but for the entire structure of society, towards something smarter, cleaner, more intelligent, and more aligned with the natural forces of the Earth and the cosmos itself. He's talking about acknowledging the reality of the conscious entities that surround us, whether he understands that or not. And here's where it gets really interesting. If you look at Trump's human design profile, it suggests that he's here to bring heaven to earth once he's tasted it himself. A man born with a golden spoon, untouched by vice, never drinking, never smoking, never falling into the usual trappings of power. Somehow, whether by fate or by design, this guy might actually deliver on what he says. And it all comes back to that strange, almost predestined connection he has to Nikola Tesla. Thank you for watching. My name is Adam David, and if you enjoyed this content, please like this video and consider subscribing, because every person that helps me grow this channel is really helping spread this message. And I believe that if we get enough people understanding the true power of the human being and what it can contribute to its own environment and to the world, we can begin to change the world almost overnight. Again, thank you for watching. My name is Adam David.